she had this machine and I knew I would use it.
Hello.
And then we were going to get away. So I said, I can't let you do this. So she bought it, but it was years ago. Because otherwise I'm like, hey, I got a deal for you. No, I got
Okay.
So it does a little bit of the
Good morning.
Yeah, I have a little bit of just buttholes.
Yeah, I have one of the smart sewing machines, so it can do like really simple embroidery or simple, just like needlework.
Scallops.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Ooh.
Yeah, but have I done it? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's on the machine. Right. It's like, have I done that? Have I? The tension's wrong. Oh, well, I'll try it later. Yeah.
Well, see, that's why I got this machine. Is like I never want to mess. I never have to worry
Exactly.
about thread tension or needle tension ever again.
Yeah.
There you go.
I am done.
That's exactly why. It just reinforces the need for the machine.
Yeah. Well, my machine,
We're talking about embroidery.
Years ago, and I took it to get it fixed.
Okay.
I couldn't find anything. I mean, they don't have sewing machine shops. So my husband just broke a screwdriver and put it on. Like,
There you go.
It, like it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm going to take over the conversation now. Sorry. We're going to segue from embroidery, a very good and fulfilling conversation to have, to blood sugar regulation as we're going in. So with last week, which we've been having computer stuff, so it's been like y'all have been here, that's great, but the online folks have been missing out. Sorry about that, but hopefully today it looks like everything is good to go today. So last week we were looking at issues that come up for us generally at this time of the year. This time of the year, because of the change in seasons, is pretty significant, even though I do want to point out that it is really common here in Southern California. That's where we live. In Southern California, it's really common to minimize the effects that the seasonal changes have on us. And so for us, it's easy to see because it's sunny and beautiful and bright on Christmas Day, on New Year's Day, when we have the Rose Parade here on New Year's Day. It's a point of pride with us that the rest of the world is going to see that it is sunny here in Southern California. And so it is important to recognize that when you live in an environment, there's other environments that kind of fall into this kind of category too. When you live in an environment that doesn't vary too much, the people on the other side of this I would imagine, be people who live like in northern Maine or, in the Eastern European areas where the opposite is true, where they're so often, more generally cold and you get this little bit of warmth. Wherever you are, where there's not that change in seasons, it's often easy to kind of fall into the mindset, as we do here. I hear it all the time here, that, it's always like, we don't have any seasons here, right? I will even do it. Admittedly, my seasonal comment is we have two seasons. We have the season when the coconut oil is solid and the season when the coconut oil is liquid. And those are the two seasons. But we have seasonal changes. We have 4 seasons. And even though we can't feel it because it's sunny on New Year's Day here, it's important to recognize that we are going into the winter. We are subject to the change in the wheel of the year, to the seasonal changes. Even if the sun is shining, it's shining at a different angle, it's a shorter day, and we are really subject to all of those things. And it's important for us to honor that. Again, because we live in Southern California, and also because of accessibility of stuff, because we also live in dominant culture, and so we can get things, it's easy to eat foods that are generally, summer fruits. We can just go to Cuba. Cuba's got summer right now. So we'll just have peaches sent up from Cuba, and we're just going to eat peaches like we're just going into summer. It's helpful to not do that, to be mindful that we are going into winter, and maybe we do want to, number one, not have the additional cost of fuel and all of that, all of the not taken into account costs of having that that access. Also, just kind of the weirdness of that, that lots of people don't have that access, but also really the direct effect that it has on our bodies to really enjoy peaches when they're here, really enjoy that very short cherry season here, really enjoy, the fact that we're just about to come into Satsuma tangerine season, which is one of my favorites, and it's just right around Christmas. It's a really meaningful one for me. So, and we're going into dark greens. We're getting, green leafy things. We're in broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower season. This is for us also as we're going into gardening here in Southern California. A lot of other places are putting their gardens to sleep. They're done with gardening, and we're going into our second gardening season, this is the cool weather crops. This is the greens. It's the non-fruiting things, the vegetative things. So we're just gearing up for a new gardening season too, which also acknowledges that it is different to live in Southern California. It is different to live in those areas. So just recognize the changes. Oh, hi, Ren. Oh, I missed you too. Thanks for showing up today. It's good to see you. Satsuma oranges coming in, right? I know it is very, very good. And if y'all have never had Satsumas, then you need to fix that this season. So we've been looking at changes in how we take care of ourselves. Last week we were talking about the digestive system and looking at how to support our digestion when we're changing the types of foods that we're eating. We're changing the amounts of foods that we're eating. We're changing, we're getting all of the kind of festive foods that are generally often harder to digest. They have a higher amount of stuff that we're not used to. So yeah, support of the digestive system during that time. Today, what I want to look at is support of blood sugar. We are really going into a time when our access to sweets and starches and foods that we don't generally eat and things that we don't generally ingest is really going to start increasing. And so having support for our blood sugar beforehand, being mindful that this is going to be a thing that affects us in a number of different ways, for different people. So I do want to recognize that a lot of the plants that we're going to work with today do have a very specific effect on not only blood sugar levels, but also insulin sensitivity. And I'll go into a little bit. I'm going to try to not go into the detail that we did with the digestive system. That's super fun, but it leaves me less room to talk about actually the plants. But I want to go into, the endocrine system and endocrine support and how that presents with the pancreatic function for blood sugar regulation. And even if we don't have type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes, most of us are subject to our body's response to sugars in different ways. So sugar is one of the primary fuels that our body uses. It is the cleanest burning fuel. And evolutionarily, our access to sugar-rich plants was kind of limited. Agriculture changed that. And then, processing of foods changed that. And now we have an abundance of starches, abundance of sugars. But evolutionarily, we still have the same bodies that treated carbohydrates as a precious thing that you really only came across when you found some, ripe fruits that were in season, or some roots, or some honey, or something like that, right? So we still have that. Oh, that's a precious commodity that we want to store and keep for later, because who knows when we're going to have another really good concentrated source of fuel, right? So we need to hold on to that. We still have that mindset in our body, that body kind of response, because it hasn't been that long evolutionarily that we have just had this abundance of resources. So that is an important thing to remember, is that sometimes we tend to think that, oh, I just don't have any control over my cravings for carbohydrates. Well, I mean, you don't. You are under control of your evolutionary, this big part of the brain that says, who knows when you're going to get these nutrients again. We know at our next meal we're going to, because we have an abundance of stuff around us, but we still have that scarcity mindset when it comes to how our body responds to carbohydrates. So we want to not beat ourselves up for our relationship with plants like this. Hi. There's a comfy chair still there, or the big cushions too for the floor. We're talking about blood sugar support. So sugar is a really easy fuel for the body to use, a lot easier than fat. Our body can mobilize fat storage for energy usage, but it's easier to use sugars. And our brain is one of the biggest users of sugar. So when blood sugar levels drop down, then there's going to be certain, hey, Tuco and Kitty, hi, good to see you. Then we have a big part of our brain that's going to start yelling for sugar. It's going to say, we need sugar in here. And so we get sugar cravings. So we have those kind of strikes against us, a body that wants that sugar and a brain that wants that sugar. Right? And easy access to sugars where we didn't have that before. So these are all kind of things that we want to be mindful of when we're looking at regulating that sugar. So let's talk about what happens with blood sugar imbalances or how the body uses sugar. So the hormone that is responsible for regulation of blood sugar is insulin. Insulin is a hormone produced by the pancreas. The pancreas does two different things. We were talking about the pancreas last week when it came to digestion, because the pancreas is an exocrine gland, meaning it squirts stuff directly into an area to make stuff happen. So the pancreas secretes pancreatic juices into the small intestine to help with digestive function in that small intestine, right? So that's one of the things that the pancreas does. The other thing that the pancreas does is that it's an endocrine gland. So it's an exocrine gland via its work on the digestive system, and it's an endocrine gland. Endocrine glands are glands that produce hormones that go into the bloodstream. So exocrine is right where it's squirting, right directly into the place. The pancreas squirts juices into the small intestine, and that's where it works. The pancreas produces insulin, and it goes into the bloodstream, and it works throughout the body. That's the difference between an exocrine gland and an endocrine gland, and the pancreas does both. So it can be a little bit confusing when people are looking at pancreatic function. Sometimes we want to look at, well, what is it about the pancreas that you want to look at, right? Because it's going to be different depending on what function we're looking at. So we're looking at the endocrine system. So yeah.
Do you mind if I summarize that?
Yep.
Okay, so exocrine is it squirts juices into the small intestine,
That's right.
and then endocrine is it does something to the bloodstream.
Yes. Produces hormones that are working in the bloodstream.
Insulin?
Insulin is specifically the hormone. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Cool.
exactly. That's exactly right. So one is going into the bloodstream, and the bloodstream is going all over the body, right? We're relying on its production in the bloodstream to go to all of the cells in the body. Whereas if you're squirting something into an area, that's just a localized effect. So we have a systemic effect and a localized effect, right? Is another way that we could summarize that. Yeah? Okay. So the endocrine glands, all of the endocrine system, when we're talking about anything in the endocrine system, we're talking about a gland that produces hormones, and those hormones go in the bloodstream. So we have the thyroid, and we have the ovaries or the gonads. We have the adrenals. We have the pancreas. We have the thymus. All of these are glands that produce hormones that go into the bloodstream. And all of those are regulated by a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. We've talked about this before in other areas, and we'll talk about it again next week when we're talking about stress. Hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is kind of the regulator of the body. The hypothalamus is what is looking at that bloodstream and making sure that the levels of those hormones in the bloodstream are where they're supposed to be. And when the hypothalamus, the part of the brain, sees that levels in the bloodstream are off, it's going to signal to the pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland is the master gland of the endocrine system. The pituitary gland is the part of the brain that actually tells all those other glands what to do. It tells them produce more estrogen, produce more progesterone, produce more adrenaline, produce more insulin, or it tells them to stop. So under the direction of the hypothalamus tells the pituitary, do this, the pituitary does this, and then there's a feedback loop, right? Because it goes into the bloodstream. So here, it's the hypothalamic pituitary pancreatic axis, right? Hypothalamic pituitary pancreatic axis. The hypothalamus is telling the pituitary, tell the pancreas to produce more insulin. The pancreas produces more insulin. the insulin goes into the bloodstream, and the hypothalamus sees that there's insulin in the bloodstream, and the hypothalamus says, thank you. And it kind of calms down, right? Oh my God. Oh my God. Hold on just a moment, because fuck yeah. Oh.
Doing laundry and I heard you. Who needs laundry?
Mwah. Okay, I'm good. Sorry, folks. This is Alicia. You do your laundry. The laundry will be waiting for you because no one else is going to do it. Okay, so we're looking at the hypothalamic pituitary pancreatic axis here. So there's a little feedback loop here, right? And this is where we are looking quite often when we are regulating blood sugar, right? So what I want you to be mindful of is that this is the same axis that we look at for anything that is producing hormones, right? So we have a hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, or we have a hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis. And so it's all the production of the hormones and the quieting of the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus says, thank you. Right? Okay, so with that in mind, insulin, the hormone that we are looking at specifically here, insulin's job is to grab onto all of those sugars when we have those sugars in our diet, when we're getting those sweets. The body wants to use that as energy. It's the cleanest burning source of energy. And so it's the insulin's job to grab onto that sugar and bring it in the cells and burn it for energy, right? The cells have insulin receptors. So this is another big concept to remember whenever we're talking about cell-to-cell communication, right? We're getting information here. Generally, we have one cell, in this case, it's the pancreas, the cells of the pancreas is producing something, and that something is called a ligand. A ligand is just something that sticks to something else. It is a key in a lock and key, right? So, and then we have a receptor. The receptor is the lock part of a lock and key, right? So just like a lock goes into a key and they're specifically made so that only one key goes into one lock, just the same way, we have one cell that produces a ligand, one cell that produces a receptor, and it binds. We have ovaries that produce estrogen, the ligand, and they bind to estrogen receptors on cells and stimulate estrogenic production. We have a ligand being insulin, and it binds to insulin receptors on a cell, and it tells that cell, open up, we're going to grab some sugar, we're going to bring sugar in, and you're going to use that for energy, right? So the ligand and receptor, cell-to-cell communication happens this way. So we talk about this quite often in this thing. So receptor activity is one of the ways that we can affect anything that has this ligand receptor thing. There's two things that we can do. We can increase the activity of the ligand, whatever that is. We can increase the activity of the receptor, whatever that is. Or we can see if there's something that is blocking activity of the receptor, right? So there's a bunch of different ways that we can look at that. Now, when we're looking specifically at insulin as a receptor, number one, when we're looking at that first thing of let's just increase the amount of the ligand, we want to remember that we have that hypothalamic pituitary x-axis, that feedback loop. And if we're increasing production of a hormone, there's going to be a negative feedback loop. We talked about this in the use of digestive enzymes last week when we were talking about digestive enzymes for support of digestion. They can be really, really helpful. But if you're bringing in those enzymes from an exogenous source outside of the body, exogenous, for bringing in that outside source, the digestive system is going to go, cool, you got this. I don't have to produce as many digestive enzymes. And so the net effect is a weakening, a lowering of digestive function because we have an outside source coming in. That's a negative feedback loop. The effect is a lowering of that. If we produce a high amount of a hormone here, if we just produce a whole bunch of X hormone, number one, that's a really problematic thing to do because hormones are really strong and they have a whole bunch of unlooked for side effects. But number two, that's going to disrupt and throw off that balance that our body has. Generally, the body knows more about how to regulate these hormones than we do. And we go in sometimes at our peril, just messing with hormones and throwing them in there without looking at other ways to support them. This is what we do as herbalists, is we look at other ways to support that. So we're not doing that, increasing the ligand. So We're not going to do that. Generally, here's where we're going to look. And so insulin as the receptor, the other problem with just increasing insulin, sometimes that's what we do, right? Some people take insulin because that's one of the tools that a doctor has is we'll just increase the amount of insulin. Hold on, before we do that, we're going to talk about type 2 diabetes, right? Because generally type 2 diabetes or a pre-diabetic condition is usually what we're concerned with in all of this we're looking at in this regulation of blood sugar during times when we're just eating more sweets. So this ligand receptor thing, we have these receptors for sugar here, and this is where the sugar, glucose, comes in, packaged with insulin. Insulin says, hey, got a package for you. Open up, we got this. Now, this receptor can often become less sensitive. The sensitivity of that receptor is decreased. The receptor is going, la, 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 la. I don't hear you. Don't care that you've got that glucose there. You can't come in. We've decreased the sensitivity of that cell to insulin, right? Insulin's holding there. We have the sugar. We have the insulin. What we don't have is entry into the cell because the receptor is not working the way that it should. If this goes on, we have a couple of problems. We don't have the use of sugar, and so our energy levels decrease. Our brain is the biggest user of blood sugar. Our brain function is going to decrease. We also have a whole bunch of sugar outside the cell, and what happens to sugar when it's outside the cell and not being used? It stores as fat. What type of fat does it store as? Do you know? 10 points if anyone knows this. Visceral fat, yes. And the form is as triglycerides. Triglycerides. So when we talk about elevated triglycerides as blood fats, this is one of the markers of blood fats that you'll often see when people go and get a blood draw. They'll see elevated cholesterol, elevated triglycerides. So these are free fats flowing in the blood. They do generally tend to be deposited often as abdominal fat. Abdominal fat deposition can be, especially when it's associated with elevated with increased insulin resistance, this can be one of the primary causes of that abdominal fat deposition. There's many different reasons why bodies tend to do things that they do. So there's other reasons for it. But when we start to see a whole bunch of kind of markers towards that, it's something to pay attention to. So type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetic conditions, metabolic syndrome, these are all kind of syndrome X. These are all terms for this same issue of a decreased sensitivity of these receptors to insulin. And so, yeah, we get increased fat deposition, we get decreased energy production, and we also have an increase in insulin outside the cell. Now, extracellular, outside the cell, extracellular insulin is problematic because when we have too much of a hormone outside the blood, outside of the cell, in the bloodstream, we're going to have side effects associated with increased amounts of that hormone. The primary problems with insulin is it causes damage to blood vessels and to nerves. It damages blood vessels and nerves, and we often see long-term effects of blood sugar problems is decreased circulation, and it generally starts in the hands and the feet. So you'll see diabetic neuropathy as the nerves start to die back. They die back because of the increased amount of insulin in the bloodstream, because the insulin isn't able to get into the cell, and so it causes numbness, tingling, pain, shooting pain. We'll see the hands and feet will start getting cold. We see problems with vision. We see problems with the kidneys. The kidneys' job is to filter the blood, right? So the kidneys have these very delicate little blood vessels in them made for filtering blood. And when the elevated insulin causes damage to the blood vessels, it also causes damage to the kidneys. So we have decreased kidney function with this. So all of these issues of elevated insulin, we always see in people who have any kind of diabetes. We want to be mindful that long-term effects, you are going to have circulatory problems, you're going to have neurological problems if this isn't addressed, right? So we can have too much insulin because we have type 2 diabetes. We can also have too much insulin because we we have type 1 diabetes, and type 1 diabetes, the pancreas is not producing insulin at all. And so we have to take it as a medication, in which case we have too much insulin in the bloodstream because we're taking it as a medication, right? And we have to take it as a medication because we have to have insulin. There is no way to make the body produce insulin in type 1 diabetes. And when the pancreas has absolutely decreased production of insulin, a lot of people don't want to go on a medication. And I understand that and I respect that. And also when you're dealing with an endocrine gland that is no longer producing the hormone that it needs to produce, you have to take that hormone. There's just no way around it. You cannot survive without taking hormone. So whether it's the thyroid or the pancreas, you just have to take the hormone. Okay, so here we have a lot of things that can work here. Lots of things can increase insulin receptor sensitivity in cells. So this is largely an issue associated with nutrition and exercise and certain specific nutrients. So we're going to focus primarily on that today. And even if you don't have blood sugar imbalances specifically, we still have dysregulation of this system when we're exposed to a high amount of sugars and starches and excessive amounts of these easy to use carbohydrates. In most of us, we're kind of skirting on the edge of this insulin sensitivity, most of us just because of dominant culture and age and, just all sorts of things. We're kind of there. And so being mindful of this is going to be really, really helpful for us. All right. So increasing insulin sensitivity is one of the big things that we want to look at. And there are a couple of plants that specifically work at that. But first, what I want to address is that we are working on the endocrine system. And so we always want to, whenever we're making a formula, and today we're going to be playing with tinctures and glycerides instead of making teas. I thought that would be fun for y'all to play with, having something immediately available for this. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different, no, I have 5, because one of those is a tincture or glyceride blend. So I have 5 different plants, and they're plants that I go to for blood sugar regulation during this when I'm just making a basic formula. And so I'm going to go through the use of those and why we choose those. Let's see. So we want to recognize that we are working with the endocrine system. And so whenever we're working with dysregulation of the endocrine system, we always want to ask, how do we support that system, right? We always want to ask, whenever we're doing any type of formulation, whether we're making a tea or a tincture or whatever, how do we assess, this is the system that I'm choosing to work on. How do I make a formula that is going to ultimately, when I finish this protocol that I'm creating, this system should be stronger and healthier than when I came to it. Right? This is opposite of what we often see when we're taking a medication, is the medication causes the system to become weaker. We don't want to do that. That's why we like to use plants and nutrients and foods and movement and all of that, is because we want the system to change, especially when it's something like this that responds very readily to change if we grab it early enough. If we find that we're just in that increasing insulin resistance area, there's a whole lot that we can do to change that. But one of the first things is regulation and making that hypothalamus happy. The happier the hypothalamus is, the less likely it is to just kind of freak out and demand things of all of the systems, right? We want to keep the hypothalamus happy. And this is the idea behind the use of what class of herbs? What class of herbs keeps the hypothalamus happy? There is an axis, hypothalamic pituitary. You generally see these used in this axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or what's called the HPAA. So there's a class of compounds that we use in herbs that are regulating to the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and those are adaptogens. Adaptogens are plants that allow our body to respond to stressors in a more calm and regulated and graceful way, right? And so here, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, we were talking about the others before, here is where we see where the endocrine system attaches to the nervous system, because the adrenals produce a hormone, but they also produce a neurotransmitter, right? And through the production of adrenal hormones, they activate the nervous system. We have a really strong amount of nervous system activity and reactivity, and through that, the stress response via adrenal dysregulation. And so when we take adaptogens, they are helping to regulate this response so that when we are exposed to a stressor, and there's many different stressors in our environment, this is one of the problems with the world that we live in right now, is that there are so many different things that are stressors on our body that we're just dealing with, that this is always being triggered. And if this is triggered, then it's affecting the hypothalamus's regulation of all of the other endocrine glands as well, including the pancreas. So whenever we have a chance to give support to a system at its most basic place, we want to do that while we're also looking at the direct area that we're working at, right? So here we can really easily go in here, because also the stress response is so dysregulating to blood sugar sensitivity, right? So I have 2 different adaptogens that I like to use in blends for blood sugar regulation, because they're great adaptogens, and they're also very specifically helpful for blood sugar regulation. And one of them is Tulsi, or holy basil. So that's our first plant today. And there was a recent study. Tulsi is the Sanskrit name, holy basil is the Western name. Tulsi is a member of the basil family, and it's lovely and aromatic. This is a glycerite of Tulsi. I'm going to send around. When we taste things with a community dropper, you're going to drop it just on the back of your hand. I'm going to take it off there, not squirting it in your mouth, because that's nasty. This is a glyceride. It's not a tincture, so there is no alcohol here. If you're sensitive to alcohol, you can take this. Glycerin is a nice way to extract herbs, certain herbs that like it in a concentrated form like that. So holy basil is a plant that regulates this system. It's perfect for this. It is also very, very good specifically at increasing insulin sensitivity in cells. So we can take just Tulsi by itself, as a tea, as a tincture, as a capsule, however you use Tulsi. This is another reason why I really love using Tulsi, is it's really a generous plant in terms of making its medicine available. It's like tea, yes. Glycerin, yes. Tincture, yes. Yeah. Make a pesto with me, sure. I can. Doesn't matter. Just get the medicine into you. You can even go to Vaughn's and buy the what is the tea blend? I'm always forgetting the name of it. Organic India has the Tulsi teas. They make like the Tulsi rose tea. They make like 10 different types of flavored teas. It's really good medicine. It's really, really good medicine. You can get it at Vaughn's for like $5. So you don't have to, get Tulsi in very specialized forms and super critical standardized extracts. No, just get some Tulsi. So I've got it here for you as a tincture and as a glyceride. So I do think that the tincture is a little bit stronger. And I also want to, by giving you the glyceride, I also want to talk about the use of glycerides in blood sugar regulation, because we can use them, and also we want to be mindful of them. So glycerin, when we're looking at glycerin as an extraction agent, it's sweet, right? It's really, really sweet. It's not a sugar. It's what's called a sugar alcohol. So glycerin is also known as glycerol. And wherever you see this OL at the end, this is like sorbitol or mannitol or xylitol or erythritol. These are sugar alcohols. So they are not glucose. They don't work in the body like a sugar. The body can't use them as sugar. And so many people who have blood sugar problems like to use those as an alternative sweetener. And they're fine. You can use those as an alternative sweetener. This doesn't have a strong effect on blood sugar levels. It has a little bit of an effect, but generally in the amounts that you're getting in like a tincture dosage, it's not enough to worry about. It gets to be more problematic if you're using it as a sweetener. If you're using glycerin as a sweetener, the dosages start to get up there, and that can be a little bit much. Also, as with most sugar alcohols, it can have a stool softening effect, which is a positive effect for some people, and generally not something that you're going to see in the dosages here. But it is not a sweet, it's not a sugar, so it's not going to cause changes, significant changes in your blood sugar level, and that's good. But what I do want to bring up, and the glycerol is a really good place where we can talk about this concept, is that when we are trying to retrain our sensitivity or our desire, our craving for sweet things, it's not helpful to have things that are sweet. Because even if it isn't affecting our blood sugar level, the taste receptors, the sweet receptors on our tongue are made very happy by things like that. They're made very happy by licorice root. They're made very happy by stevia. They're made very happy by sucralose, the yellow packets, or by anything that is sweet is going to tell them, it's going to normalize sweet in those receptors. It's going to make them really happy, and it's going to crave more. So there's really only one way to change our sensitivity and our craving to sweets, and that's to not eat sweets. I'm not saying that you need to do that, but I'm saying that if that is a concern for you, if that's where you're really wanting your focus to be, there's just so many ways that you can do that. And as long as you are giving those little taste receptors a little bit of sugar, they're going to be really happy about that, and they're not going to quiet down. So I just want to say that because it's really easy for us to just go, I'm just going to use stevia, I'm just going to use licorice, I'm just going to use glycerin, I'm just going to use low-hand fruit extract. You can absolutely use those, and they're a really great choice to use for many people. But also, you're not changing your sensitivity to sweets. You're not changing your relationship to the flavor of sweetness. All right, so Tulsi increases sensitivity to insulin, so it's helping with that receptor. It helps to regulate the hypothalamic pituitary axis, and it helps to reduce the stress response in the body. It is an adaptogen, so by increasing that resilience of the stress response, we don't have a lot of the other effects of stress response that can make blood sugar imbalances even worse, which is pretty much all of them. The other adaptogen that I have is Eleuthero. Eleuthero is also known by many people as Siberian ginseng. Siberian ginseng is the former name for this. There's actually a law that was passed in one of the Bush one, I believe, in Bush one, that we can't call Eleuthero Siberian ginseng. The ginseng growers did not like that it was being called ginseng because it's not a true ginseng. It's not in the Panax genus. It's in the Eleutherococcus genus, and so we call it Eleuthero. But it is the same thing. And this is the original adaptogen. This is the plant for which the term adaptogen was coined in the 1940s. In Russia. And so it is a great plant as an adaptogen for regulating that hypothalamic function, for making that hypothalamus happy. And it's also a plant that is really nice for long-term gentle endurance and energy. It's not as stimulating as the other ginsengs, as the true ginsengs. And it can have a really positive effect on blood sugar, on that insulin sensitivity. So it's a great plant to use. It doesn't have any effects on blood pressure or heart palpitations. It's not causing any jitteriness. A lot of people tend to be concerned when they hear that it's a ginseng, but it is the Panax ginsengs that can be more stimulating like that, and generally is not stimulating. So another plant that I almost always throw into blends for blood sugar is cinnamon. And cinnamon, there's really great, really fascinating research on this that came out. The first big study on cinnamon came out, gosh, it was about 20 years ago now. And it was a study from Pakistan. And they gave people cinnamon in a powder form in increasing doses. The dosage ranges were the equivalent of about a quarter teaspoon of cinnamon powder up to a teaspoon of cinnamon powder. And they looked at the changes in parameters associated with blood sugar. So fasting blood glucose, total serum glucose, triglycerides, and cholesterol, HDL to LDL ratios, all of these kind of parameters that are associated with blood sugar problems. And after 40 days on the study, 45 days on the study, what they found was there was a dose-dependent effect. So the higher the dosage, the stronger the effect was, but a significant effect on fasting blood glucose and on all of those blood fats. On most of those parameters, there were significant drops. And so it led to a lot of interest in the use of cinnamon for blood sugar regulation. Now it's important to get the right cinnamon when we're looking at cinnamon. So oftentimes if you go and you buy cinnamon in a store, it's just going to be labeled as cinnamon. And that's it. You get a powdered cinnamon or you get cinnamon sticks. But when you ask what type of cinnamon, they don't know. It's just cinnamon. Don't bother asking. They are not going to know. If it's not on the label, they're not going to know. But there are hints that you can get. It is important to get the correct species of cinnamon because it does matter here. It doesn't always matter. We've talked about the fact that sometimes it's, if you get just the same genus of plant, it's like, that's close enough. You're getting an osamum. I think for a lot of the tulsi, the basils, I think really pretty much most of the basils, including culinary basil, probably has same effects as tulsi, as holy basil. I think if it's an osamum, it's close enough. There's a lot of really great studies out of Europe with using culinary basil in many of the same ways that we use tulsi as the holy basil. So that's one of them. But with the cinnamon, there's a significant difference. And the primary difference is the two genera that we use to provide cinnamon. And one of them is cinnamomum. Cinnamomum are the true cinnamons. This is cinnamon bark. And the other one is called cassia. So there's cinnamomum genus, and there's a bunch of different species within there, and there's cassia species. And the cassia species is a spicy cinnamon. It's really delicious. My favorite cassia cinnamon is the Vietnamese cinnamon. Vietnamese cinnamon is a cassia and it has a really high essential oil content. It's really cinnamony. It's a beautiful spicy flavor. It's really, really delicious. And if all you're doing is sprinkling it on your toast or on your rice pudding, it's fine to use that. But if you're using it in the higher doses, as were suggested in the Pakistani study, it is not appropriate to use a cassia cinnamon because with that higher amount of the essential oils comes a high amount of specific compounds called coumarins. And the coumarins, not all coumarins are harmful. There's many beneficial coumarins, but the coumarins in cassia are hepatotoxic. They're toxic to the liver. They're going to cause liver damage. And so if you take high amounts of a non-labeled cinnamon, you can actually cause damage to your liver when you're trying to support your blood sugar levels. And they don't tell you what kind of cinnamon oftentimes. So you want to check to make sure that the cinnamon that you're getting is the best one. The specific cinnamon that was used in these studies is Cinnamomum zealandicum. Cinnamomum, see, bless you, zealandicum. And this is Ceylon cinnamon. Ceylon cinnamon comes from Sri Lanka, from Ceylon. And this is also, now it's grown in Ceylon, but most of the Ceylon cinnamon goes to Mexico. This is canela. So you want to get your cinnamon, either you go to a Mexican, a resource and get the canela, good canela, or you get the cinnamon zealandicum, the Ceylon cinnamon. Now, if you're getting it in the sticks, you can always tell because just like the canela, you can crumble it up in your hands. If it's a true Cinnamomum zealandicum, it's very thin, fragile layers. And so it's easy to break up. It's easy to crumble up. If you have really thick layers, just a big old chunky one, it could be one of the other species of Cinnamomum. It is likely to be a cassia. So you don't always know, but that's one of the ways that you can tell if the plant is in the stick form. If it's in the powder form, you don't know. You're relying on them to tell you. So you always want to make sure, get the Ceylon cinnamon or canela for that. All right. Cinnamon, it is best to use cinnamon for blood sugar as the powder. It's best to use it in your food because part of the effects of cinnamon, part of the beneficial effects is the fiber. And if we're using a liquid extract, we are specifically taking the fiber out of the equation, right? We've extracted it from the fiber. Thank you, darling. Yeah. So we have cinnamon as a glycerite here. Cinnamon is really mucilaginous, and so when you make it as a tincture, the mucilage gets really disrupted. If anyone has ever made a cinnamon tincture, you know what I'm talking about. It turns into really disgusting ball of snot as you're straining out the cinnamon, because all of the slime comes out and it's damaged by the alcohol. It changes the structure of it and it makes it much more solid. Very much like really nasty stuff. So you just have a ball of snot, of delightfully cinnamon scented snot, but snot nonetheless. And all of the medicine is held up in that. You don't have it available to you. So it is really good if you're making a cinnamon extract to make it as the tea too, exactly, Tuco. Yes, the tea will also get a big layer of mucus down at the bottom. If you put that whole teaspoon of cinnamon, because you're doing the teaspoon, if you put it into the tea, by the time you get down to the bottom of it, yeah, you got a nice layer of mucus there. So when you're putting it into your tea, what I generally recommend is have your tea or whatever you're going to mix it into your coffee, into your hot chocolate, whatever, drink it down to the bottom so you have just a little bit left and the temperature's gone down. Take your spoonful and mix it in there and then knock it back so you don't have it absorbing all of the water and turning into that slime. Because I don't know about you, and you might be someone who's fine with swallowing the slime, but when it gets that thick and with that dosage, you have a lot of slime. It's really, really disgusting at that point. It's great when it rehydrates in your gut and all of that slime is going along your gastrointestinal tract. That's beautiful for your gastrointestinal tract. And I think also that slime, as part of the fiber, is also part of what's binding onto sugars in the gut and holding them and regulating their release into the bloodstream from the small intestine. Right, so that's another benefit of using the whole cinnamon. Now, one of the benefits of using the glycerite is if you're making a tincture blend, it's going to go in there really nicely. But also consider the warming effect, the energetic effect of cinnamon. Cinnamon is spicy, it's warming, it's increasing our circulation, it's increasing our metabolism, it's increasing our energy, it's increasing our mood. And all of those are detrimentally affected when we're dealing with blood sugar effects. So even if it is just the aromatics that we're using, those are still really beneficial. If we have lowered metabolism, it's nice to use spicy things to warm them up. If we're cold, it's nice to have warming things to get that circulation going. And it's still beneficial. But if you're looking at specifically the therapeutic effects of cinnamon as associated with the Pakistani study, you would need to be taking the powder and not rely on the liquid extracts at all. Right? Because that's not where the medicine is. When you say a high amount of cinnamon, 1 to 2 teaspoons. So in that study, 6 grams was the highest dosage that they were using in the Pakistani study. And that would equal to 1 teaspoon. So 1 teaspoon is generally fine. That's the highest dosage of that one. And you should eat the slime. Yeah. Or just don't. So either eat the slime if you are a better person than I am, or just don't let the slime form in the cup, let the slime form in the gut. Yeah, but you Tuco. If you want to do the slime, then I support you in doing the slime. Andreina, thank you. Let's see. So that's cinnamon. Any questions about cinnamon? It is yummy. Do I have I think I don't have a cinnamon. I have a cinnamon tincture here. And no, it was properly strained, so there's none of the fiber. Oh, no, that's not cinnamon. That's cardamom. So I'm just going to send that around to you because it's cardamom tincture. So why would you not want to? You can either take a drop of it or you can put some behind your ears because it's cardamom. Yes.
Someone asked about cinnamon. Does cinnamon act like an adaptogen, like you with
No.
or tulsi or
No. So there's a couple. Thank you. There's a couple of different effects. number one, we're not really sure the mechanism. And that's true for a whole bunch of stuff. That's true for many medications, for most medications, and for most herbs. It's like a whole bunch of it is magic. We know that things work. We have kind of idea of where they work, but the exact mechanism, generally we don't know. And that's okay. We can just have it be magic. Here, there's a couple of different areas. So via the fiber, and this is why I think the fiber is such an important part of it, is because fibers affect the absorption of sugars from the gut into the bloodstream. And that's a really big part of where we can impact blood sugar regulation is in the gut. Now, this is also one of the cautions that we talk about with slimy foods, right? If we're taking marshmallow root or slippery elm or any of the slimy herbs, one of the caveats is that they can impede absorption of medications or nutrients or herbs that they're with because of their production of slime. Because if they are, so we were talking about the small intestine being that site of absorption last week, right? It has all those little villi that are on the small intestine wall. We have this little area here where nutrients are coming in here and just being absorbed all along this surface area. Well, if you have just had like marshmallow root tea, really strong marshmallow root slimy tea, this slime kind of goes along and coats this, which is great, and it's soothing and healing, feels really great. But now if you have stuff that needs to be absorbed, theoretically, there can be some interaction there, and there can be a decreased absorption of stuff. Theoretically, there could be an increased absorption of stuff too if you have a pattern of dryness and inflammation and irritation in that small intestine, because then all those villi are irritated and inflamed and reactive, and they're not going to be really interested in absorption of stuff if they're inflamed and reactive, right? So having that slime can quiet them down and decrease that reactivity, quiet down any immune system responses that we often see with gut stuff, right? Food sensitivities, food reactivities, quiet all of that down. So sometimes the slime can be helpful. Sometimes the slime can't be helpful. It kind of depends on your constitution, on your tissues, right? And how that warmth feels. So, but we do want to be mindful of that. That, I think the high amount of slime, because there's so much slime in cinnamon, plus there's also the other cellulose, the other types of fibers that are in there. There's different types of fibers that are in cinnamon, right? Just the powder that goes down there. All of those fiber generally impacts the absorption of sugars because it does bind to them in the gut, in this small intestine area, and slow the rate at which they're coming in through the intestinal lining. Yes.
So would it make a difference when you had it, like if you had a meal, you would eat it, drink at the end or at the beginning?
At the beginning. So optimally, if you have fibers, and so you can use fibers therapeutically here too. If you know you're going to be going into eating a meal that's going to have a lot of like simple sugars, if you take something like ground flax seeds or psyllium husk or chia seeds, or whatever your favorite fiber is, oat bran, something with a high amount of fiber before that, then you're going to have that fiber available in the gut, a large amount of it, really a therapeutically large amount. You can have like 10 to 20 grams of fiber go into your gut and be available there. And it's going to be really good at grabbing onto stuff. It also can, for some people, this is helpful. I want to eat like as much food as I can get in there, but some people don't want to eat and aren't able to regulate their eating of food. So by taking a dosage of fiber before a meal, it's like you're packing a suitcase and you put a pillow in there, right? You can't put as much stuff in there because you have the pillow in there. There's the pillow. You can't wear the pillow. You can't do anything with the pillow, but it's taking up room. Fiber is the pillow in your suitcase. So it's just going to take up room in your stomach. You are physically less able to put more food in there because the fiber is taking up stuff. And then it's going to regulate. It's going to delay absorption of some of the sugars and fats and all of that. And it's going to help you poop better. So, so fiber can be a really beneficial thing. Yeah, we all like to poop. So, that, of course, depends on the type of fiber that you use, right? Some fibers are going to be more helpful for that. Jazz hands cilia. Yeah. Wasn't cilia, though. This could be cilia. This is cilia. This is villi. Yeah. Cilia, villi. Get it right, Tuco. Let's see. So that's cinnamon. Those receptors in the intestinal tract. Okay, here's my favorite thing to talk about. Geez Louise, and I left it in there. You think I'd have done this often enough to get this timing thing down. I want to do an experiment on y'all. Some of you already know this one.
You want me to go get it?
Yep. Because the one of the final plants that I have is a plant called gymnemna. And if you've never used gymnemna before, if you're about to go out to lunch, don't, or do, and I'm sorry. Or don't do this, and you can just like kind of see everyone else's experience, but this is going to ruin your lunch if you're about to go out for lunch, if you're about to go out and eat something in the next half hour. Gymnemna is one of the most exciting herbs when it comes to blood sugar regulation. Gymnemna is just amazing. So gymnemna also is known as gurmar. Gymnemna is the genus Gymnemna sylvestre. Gurmar is the Sanskrit name for it, which translates to sugar killer. Gymnemna contains gymnemic acids that bind to the receptors on the tongue. Cell-to-cell communication. Plant cells produce stuff and they bind to receptors on our tongue and tell us the chemistry of stuff that's coming in, right? So we have sweet receptors, we have sugar receptors on our tongue to tell us, oh, you're getting something sweet, we really like this, right? That's the things that we don't want to be activating when we are eating the sugary things. Gymnemic acids in gymnemna are able to bind with those sugar receptors on our tongue. And when they do that, they block the ability of those receptors to taste sweet things. So for about half an hour after you taste gymnemna, you are not able to taste anything sweet. So I'm going to pass around if you want to do this. That's why I'm saying, don't do this if you're about to go out to lunch because it's going to ruin your lunch or not. Your food isn't going to taste good. But if you want to take just 3 or 4 drops of this, and let it be on your tongue. You can use this as a tea. The tincture is great. You can take it as a tablet if you want the effects of gymnemna, but you don't want it to affect your tongue. You would take it as a tablet that bypasses that, and it's active in the stomach. And the reason we want it to be active in the stomach is because just in the same way, then after you do that, I'm going to pass the glyceride around. So you tasted how sweet the glyceride was, right? So what this also tells to you, by the way, is that it doesn't affect sugars. It's not that it's blocking sugars, it's blocking the sweet receptors, because this isn't a sugar. If it was only blocking true sugars, then this would still be sweet. But this is going to be not sweet. It was delicious before, and it's just going to be Tulsi. No.
I did this to people at work that they were about to go eat donuts.
Oh no, Renee! I don't know if you heard that. Renee did this to people before they were going to go eat donuts. That's mean. That's a mean thing to do. Yeah. 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 Everything is there. It's just, someone forgot to put the sugar in the recipe is what it's, which makes it really helpful if you maybe work in an office where people are always bringing in donuts, right? And so you're like, there's more donuts again. You can go and have donut. Yes, exactly. Have it there. And, have a donut, have whatever, or a quarter of a donut, whatever the amount of donut, the appropriate amount of donut is, because you should be able to have a donut. But then if you take the gymnemna after that, if you go back for more after you're like, I'm done, isn't that wild?
It is wild.
Yeah, it's not going to taste good. It's like, go ahead and eat all you want, but it's going to last for a half an hour. And sometimes that's just enough for you to get away from the thing that's calling your name. If it's the cookies in the kitchen are like, they're just not going to let you rest. This just gives you time because you're going to go and eat the cookies like, well, they don't taste good. I don't want the cookies now. I can eat the cookies, but I don't want the cookies, right? It just gives you that time. But the really cool thing is while we can taste it here, we can feel the effects here. What we don't feel, but they're there, is that those gymnemic acids not only bind to the receptors here, but they also bind to the receptors in the small intestine where sugars are taken up into the bloodstream. And so here, that cell-to-cell binding effect means that when the sugars are going through the small intestine, they're not taken up, because the receptor where they're taken up is blocked by the gymnemic acids. Here it was just affecting our taste of them. Here it's actually affecting the absorption. So Gymnemna, before meals that have a high amount of sugars, is really, really handy. It's also helpful for us to inhibit our ingestion of those sweet things through that effect. We also have seen some early studies are really, really great. More studies on this need to be done, but Gymnemna is the only thing that we've seen that increases the activity of beta cells in the pancreas. The beta cells are the cells in the pancreas that produce insulin. And so generally we say, as I said at the very beginning of this, if you have type 1 diabetes, if the pancreas has stopped producing insulin, you have to take the hormone. That's true. And generally we don't have anything that affects increasing insulin production, but this increases activity of the cells that produce insulin. So it is a really promising thing. And there's some studies that are going on that make it really, really cool. Yes.
So you said that it blocks absorption of the sugars in your small intestine.
Yes.
But I remember earlier you were saying that the sugar, like free floating kind of like sugar, gets stored as fat.
Mm-hmm.
But that's in the bloodstream.
That's
right?
yeah. It has to be absorbed.
So if it's not absorbed in the small intestine, it doesn't get into the bloodstream, and then you just poop it out.
You poop it out. You poop it out. So you're not going to get that elevation of triglycerides. You're not going to get exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not just the sugar, but it's the effects on the cardiovascular. Yes.
So
Elizabeth.
this would be better than the cinnamon.
This is one of the best herbs for blood sugar regulation that I know of. It's really effective. It's really strong. It's really exciting. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely better than the cinnamon.
Whatever you're eating, then you're not going to eat it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you do that, you are going to be eating less sugars, and you are going to be able to change the way that your relationship with sugar is. Yeah.
Or if you just take the pill
That's what I'm
and you
thinking.
can still taste the food,
Yeah.
and it still tastes good, you just won't
Yeah.
absorb
Yes.
it as
You're just
Yeah.
blocking it down here. You're blocking that good absorption.
It comes in big, it's in powder,
I
it's
only know
capsules,
like-
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, but still the plant.
Still
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Wow.
You can also take the tincture and put it into capsules, put it
Yeah.
into MG gel capsules,
Oh,
and then swallow the capsule that way. That's a very good way to do it too. That way you don't have to have like multiple like forms of it. It's like I have my tincture, but I can put in the capsule if I don't want to taste it, and I can just take it straight if I do want to taste it.
Oh.
Yes, you can take Gymnemna daily, absolutely. In fact, if you are using it for someone with type 1 diabetes or sensitivity, I would definitely want to, because you're looking for that long-term changing in insulin sensitivity. And this is one of the really exciting things, and then I'm going to let y'all go, is that we can see changes in people's sensitivity to insulin. It is really, it's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy. I wouldn't minimize it that way, but it is really possible to increase your sensitivity to insulin by use of some specific nutrients, chromium and vanadium, proper omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA, fiber. These are all magnesium. These are all critical nutrients necessary for blood sugar regulation. I ran out of time to talk about those. Movement, increasing your body movement in whatever way that feels good for you. Movement is really, really important in increasing insulin sensitivity. Decreasing the omega-6 fatty acids, the relationship of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids, and decreasing omega-6s is a really critical part of increasing insulin sensitivity using the correct omega-3s. We've talked about this a little bit before. I really need to do just a deep dive of fatty acids, because I love talking about fatty acids and I never have enough time to do that. But correct fatty acid nutrition is really, really important for that too. So lots of different ways that we can positively impact insulin sensitivity. And this is such a critical part of blood sugar regulation, and something for us to be mindful of early before it gets to a point where we have type 2 diabetes. One final thing, the primary, I know I keep on saying one final thing and then going on more, but this is the final thing. The primary medication that is used for type 2 diabetes is metformin. Metformin increases insulin sensitivity. It's a really effective medication. Some people don't like it. It is one of the more innocuous and helpful medications, so I think it's cool. But the cool thing about metformin is it was originally extracted from Galega officinalis, or goat's root. It is an herbal compound. We always talk about the fact that so many pharmaceutical medications originally come from plants. Here's one.
Wow.
Galega, Galeg, sorry, Galega officinalis. It's also it's very well known as a galactagogue, increases production of breast milk in people who are nursing. But yeah, so there you go. That's the last thing. No more last things. That's all. So they're going to make some tinctures here. I wish you all were here making tinctures with us, but you're not. So there's that. Sorry. I'm so glad that you were able to make it, Tuco. So good to see you. I'll see you next week. So we're looking at kind of all of the aspects of, seasonal stuff. Next week, we're going to be looking at the nervous system. We're going into a time where we're needing a lot of support of the nervous system for all sorts of different. We may stay on the nervous system for a couple of weeks. We may come back and revisit all of the different ways. But that's where we'll be playing again. And then we'll also revisit the hypothalamus, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, because that's a really important part of that stress reduction. So yeah, I will see you next week. Did the end stream. There we go. All right, now you folks.